Colossal Cave in southern Arizona. It's supposed to be 112 today. It's already in the hundreds this morning, so late morning. So looking forward to the 70-degree cave here. So let's get our view on. Let's go on our adventure. Here's the cave entrance. They have camping, picnic areas, ranch headquarters, restrooms, parking. Here's a view of everything. Not bad.
Like bees, they're not, they're flies, they'll be stingers. Corporate pests,
Catch. Man, that's a drop.
So these stone steps, they have been there for about 90 years, and they are really sturdy, but they can build more established. But not all the same.
The ants? The bats. You're right there flying, look.
That's for going to show.
Those are other electron plants. Welcome in. Come on down to our entrance room. Now we will stay in here a couple of minutes while our eyes adjust to the lighting and talk about some of the critters that live in this cave. First things first, though, everybody take a big old deep breath through your nose. Like that smell?
Yummy.
Yeah, well, actually, that's for me. I had chili for dinner last night. I've been caving all day. I'm just kidding. That is from our bats. Does anybody want to guess what this darker splotching on the ceiling over here is? It
Bat
is.
guano.
You got some guano over there. A lot more over here. That's the good stuff hanging from the ceiling. The only thing ever mined out of this cavern was guano. The cowboys actually ended up drilling a 75-foot hole straight into the mountain to get the little grotto where the bats hang out. They would sell that guano as fertilizer to farmers in California, and also to companies to make a few things that exploded.
Yeah.
Nitroglycerin and dynamite. There are a lot of rumors that some makeup companies used to, and some still do, put guano in eyeliner and mascara. Yeah. That is mostly untrue. Mostly. So if you have those things, you might want to check the ingredients, because the only hint I can give you is maybe she was born with it. Maybe it came from a bat. Now, while we do have around 10 to 16 different species of bat that we'll see in the park itself, they're not all cave bats. The cave bats that we do have, there are going to be two species. The first one is called the cave Meotis. If you put your thumb up, that is roughly the size of that guy. Tiny little bat. The second one, if you put your two fingers right next to that thumb, it's going to be roughly his size. That's called Townsend's big-eared bat. And all these bats that we're seeing flying around, half of them right now are adolescent. So it's kind of hard to tell by size which species it is while they're flying. What you're going to want to look out for is that the Townsend have giant pointy ears on the top of their heads, and the Meotis, they have those little round ears on top. We also do have cave spiders. They're really tiny, we don't ever see them, but we do see their webs. We have a unstudied new subspecies of cave cricket living in here, which in the past 6 months I've only seen one. They're really fast, and they tend to stay away from the lights. We also do have something called coatis. Anybody seen one of those before?
Yes.
For those of you who haven't, they are in the raccoon family. They're a little bit bigger and kind of like lankier. They do have a long nose with white fur on top. They're reddish to reddish brown with a ringed tail, and on their paws, they have opposable thumbs. They have been migrating their way up to the United States and have reached Arizona. Now, since they got here, we have had to redesign every single trash can in this park. Keep the dumpsters locked 24/7, and they've even broken into our cafe twice. The only thing they took was the margarita mix.
Yeah.
We came back that morning and was like, somebody broke in and had a party, so let's check the tapes. The coatis had a great time. In the morning, normally they'll like bother us for food and stuff. That morning it was just hissing and running. They wanted nothing to do with us. The first people to use this cave were the Hohokam Native Americans, using it from about 900 to 1450. After that, though, they mysteriously disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them.
Yeah.
Some anthropologists do think that they just either environmental factors or inner politics, they split off into the different tribes that we know today. For example, the Toda Odom or the Gila River tribe, but nobody knows for sure, really. This was a stop in their migration route, and that entrance we came in today was not originally that wide. It was about 30 inches wide. They would stay overnight, leaving trade goods on all these shelves. There's not any there anymore, unfortunately, because the second guy who found this cave didn't really care about history. He didn't know the significance of it. He did report finding about 200 antlers on that shelf over there, and we have only actually managed to recover 2 artifacts from this front room. They were hidden behind this rock fall over there, and they were carved out of rock, which might be why they got looked over. But some evidence from the Hohokam that's kind of hard to steal. Look right above our heads right there. And that's not more guano, that's a 1,000-year-old smoke stain. After crawling in the entrance, they built a fire right here, let that smoke billow up and then out, and in the morning they would be on their way.
Going to the Crystal Forest.
So as we're making our way down, we do have a nice flagstone walkway. We got hand railings. When this cave was being altered, though, it was only altered about 5%. All the tunnels we'll go walking through were already here. And then the people who built the floor, which I'll tell you about later, built straight up from the ground. So we're walking about halfway through those tunnels. As we walk along, there will be some rocks hanging out up top, and every once in a while on either side on the bottom that we'll have to watch out for. Just making sure you watch your head, shoulders, knees, and
Toes.
toes. So look, there, yeah.
So obviously, we're walking better than ages in the cave. Then
Oh, you were walking on that stuff down there.
Then have to climb back up and get to this little section over here. Man, all over the place. No.
Lots of vertical work in that cave.
Check this out.
Too much for a 16-year-old man. Okay.
It's every 3 days or so.
I'll sit in this every day.
Now, as we're making our way to this room, go ahead and look straight above our heads. You will see thousands of formations hanging up there. And all those are made out of calcite crystal. And if you turn upside down, they look like a forest. How these forms with calcite rich water drips down through holes and cracks up there in the ceiling, off of all those bumps and ridges, and down onto everything that is below. Every time it does that, it leaves behind a very thin layer of that calcite crystal. And from thousands to millions of years, you get giant formations like this. This type of crystal, it takes 100 years of constant dripping to make just 1 cubic inch of that. Now, I do get the question though, if this is crystal, why is it dull? Well, everything down here besides those handrails, which we clean every day, it's covered in thousands of years of what we call bat dust. There are 3 ingredients. They start with the letter P. First one's pollen. A portion of the bats here are pollinators. They're actually one of the keynote species for the saguaros and their entire life cycle there. So they'll come back after being in the desert and they're covered in pollen. They'll flap around, leave it all over the place, and then they do go back by and move the pea on it. It solidifies into a protective outer coating, but on the inside, they all look like this. So this is old Baldy. He's really shiny though, and all of that, that's damage from people's hand oils. Now, we do still get water. It's about every 60 years or so, but last time was 2021, and when that happened, water did drip from the ceiling up here onto him, but it just rolled off and didn't leave any crystal behind. He'll never grow again. If we're looking at all these flat ends, how many of those do you think fell on their own? Yep, the answer is none. People took all those. The second guy who found the cave, it was 1879. His name was Solomon Lick. The official story is that he was surveying the land and looking for lost cattle in a 30-inch wide hole in the ground. Kind of suspicious to me, and that was self-reported. Now, that was public land then, it's public land now. What he did own was a Stagecoach Ranch and Hotel, though, about 2.5 miles south of here. So he found the cave, and he used it to make himself money. So he told people that not only was it his cave, if you stayed at his hotel on your last day, he'd take you down and show you around. He'd bring all his guests right by here, have them rub old Baldy's forehead for good luck, and then tell them to take anything they wanted. So they started bringing big old saws to saw them off. They'd tie ropes around them, take a couple of guys and pull as hard as they could. We even have a report from 1890. Somebody brought a rifle in here and then tried to shoot at the ceiling to get them to fall. Everything down here is made of rock. Exactly, everything's made of rock and will immediately ricochet. It's a horrible idea in a cave. Now, since old Baldy is already damaged, we do use him as our divider system. If you would like to touch the cave today, this right here is your only chance. As you walk by, go ahead and rub his forehead, get some of that cave blood, but do remember, he's never been cleaned before. And somebody last year decided to walk by and lick him.
Oh,
Yeah, it's super gross, don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But if you do want to feel what the cave feels like right there, as you walk by.
How far are we down already?
Right now, and the deepest point that we'll reach today is 70.
71 feet. Wait, remember.
base or moose soy.
We have another tour coming out.
Do you want a steel or something? And I'll do that and I'll react it more. It's over there. Yeah, some of them have been touched several times. It's kind of like a weird moment where like there isn't a handrail. So people tend to like drift.
Stopped complaining when I bought my head.
Well, this is tight right here. Yeah, thank you. Watch your head.
Yeah, you live down the stairs, you got
Wow, that's cool.
Welcome back. He goes, "Man, it was a lot bigger then."
Yeah, things change for me.
Right here. These are cave drapes. A lot of the time you'll find them growing off that floating dripstone. But you can find them all hanging about by themselves on the wall, kind of like these guys back here. Now the official name is cave drape, but a different scientist came along and said, "Hey, that weird coloration, that thing kind of looks like bacon." And then some people started calling it cave bacon as a common name. Super weird. We also do have cave cheese. We have cave toast and cave fried eggs. When you're around for a long time, you kind of tend to lose track of time, get a little bit hungry because you tend to skip lunch. Now we have seen stalactites and stalagmites. Does anybody know what it's called when they grow together? That guy. Officially, it's a column. But we're going to give them a new common name today. If anybody asks, that is a stalagmite because they meet in the middle. Everyone's following up right here, and you can actually find these all throughout the limestone in here, but you can only see it where there's been a rock in the past that has sheared off, revealing that crystal. Right there, and right there.
Oh, I see.
And then after that, we got our barometer, and it's 70 degrees. Ooh, I was wrong. It's 59% humidity. My bad.
59. What's up with the matches?
So the matches are there for a couple reasons. The first thing is that we used to have a box of old candles that the CCC group, which
Yeah.
we'll learn about later, they left. So we'd have a candle there every time we took a tour, light it. We kind of dwindled down in number, and then somebody like actually snatched the last 3 of them and took them home.
Gotcha.
And then if we were in this cave and the lights went off, we had those matches and we were looking for an exit, you could light that match whichever way the flame blew.
Blue, yeah.
You go the opposite direction, you'll find an exit.
Gotcha.
So the electrical, is that part of the rail system over here?
Rail system? No, there wasn't a rail system here. There's no mine carts or anything. The only thing that they actually used were wheelbarrows and backpacks.
That's a lot of work.
Get in the zone! Woo! A couple things to point out as we walk along. First off, when we're walking, it's called a solution tunnel. If we look right above our heads, you'll see a bunch of little ones going up into the mountain. Those end below an aquifer, and for water to get down in the cave, those aquifers have to fill up, saturate, and then they'll start dripping down. When that happens, though, it brings in that water not only with the calcite, but with 2 acids, carbonic and sulfuric. Those 2 acids eat away at the softer rock down here, leaving behind the harder Escabrosa limestone. And these giant tunnels we can go crumbling and walking through. Now in the top part of the cave, once we get down a little further, we'll stop seeing this, but there are some little lighter patches of rock up on the ceiling. That is actually sandstone, a part of the ancient bedrock of the ocean that used to be here. All those little dots on that, each one of those is a seashell fossil embedded into that sandstone up there.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
As we're moving this way, on our right hand side, we got a big hole in the wall. And if you look down there, you're looking at our bottomless pit. I dropped my favorite flashlight down there this morning when I was doing my rounds. Any volunteers to go get it?
No.
So I can't actually let you go down there because it does get so narrow at the bottom that nobody can fit. But from the surface, it's about 70 foot straight to the bottom.
Wow.
The last thing I saw somebody drop down there was a couple months ago now. It was about 6 months ago now. A kid came here for his 16th birthday and he got an iPhone 14.
Ooh.
It's still at the bottom of that hole.
It's like a magnet.
So we don't know. We don't know what's down there. There could be like really delicate box work or something. So if we drop a magnet down there, we're gonna start damaging things. They are called Metate Imano. That's the local version of a mortar pestle. They use these not only to grind up different foods like corn, grains, seeds, and mesquite pods, which were part of their diet. And they also use it for different pigments of clay and a material called hematite for making their red on buff pottery. Now, if you find the mono part out in the wild, because a lot of the time they carve those in giant boulders they come back to every year. If you find a hole like that, look on the inside. If it's smooth, it was made by water. It's pockmarked, nothing special. But if you see horizontal tool marks, like in that guy, that was made by people. And a lot of the time, if it's rained in like the last 2 weeks or so, start moving around dirt. You'll find little pieces of pottery maybe even a leather working tool or two. But it's about 15% of the time, and you do have to dig down like a foot or two. But they are there. We found one in the Pantano Wash earlier this year. I thought it was an arrowhead when I picked it up. And I took it to a buddy of mine that was, he was a geology professor over at U of A. He was like, no, that's a leather working tool because one side is that smooth blade, one side is serrated, and there's a hook at the top. Good stuff. He did get it to be around a year, like 1200-ish.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. If you have a cell phone with a flashlight on it, you want to take that out, turn the flashlight on, point it at the left-hand wall as we walk along. We got some exposed crystal coming up. This first little spot, that is actually smoky quartz. And that's one of the only 3 or 4 spots of quartz we've found in the cavern. There's not a lot of that down here. There is a metallic material sticking out of the wall. It's called mica. And then we'll see calcite, optical calcite, and a little bit of argonite and dolomite. Smoky quartz right there. Right after the smoky quartz is the mica. And then we got crystals all in these walls.
Oh, nice vein.
We'll take a right and then a left onto this wall right here. On the right, all this flowing dripstone. If we look up to the top of it, there's a solution tunnel up there. When the cave gets water, that's where the water comes out first into this room. In 2021, we had a really heavy monsoon season. Ended up with about 8 inches of water on the floor in here. This is when we lost our original lighting system. Because it turns out that this crystal can handle about 50 volts. So that crystal was touching the water on the floor that had the soluble calcite in it. And that was touching conduit. So as soon as we turned that on, just fried the whole thing. For about 6 months, we were doing only lantern tours, which we still do those on Saturday mornings, like at 9, because it's a lot of fun. So making our way into this room, we will fill up this front area. If we need more space, we can have a couple people in that middle bar right there. And you can hang out behind the wall if you like to. You just won't be able to see the cool stuff in the room. So welcome into the Grotto of Lost Treasure, also known as the Movies and Popcorn Room. We do have a couple things to talk about here. We have movies, we have cave popcorn, and we have sacrifice. Which would you like to hear about first?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. So up these stairs, there's a room back there. There's a giant stalagmite growing out of the ground. That's our altar room and our altar. Does anybody have a number guess of how many sacrifices were performed back there? A little high.
Hi.
The actual answer, 0, because that is a wedding venue.
Oh, wedding.
So Frank's going along with his tours. 1929 hits, the stock market crashes, and the Great Depression rolls around. And at that point, nobody has the time or money to go take a cave tour anymore, so he has to find a way to keep preserving the rest of the cave. Solomon didn't make it to the other 39 miles. It's really hidden. So all that stuff back there, practically untouched. Now, he hears about a group forming in 1933 called the CCC. That's the Civilian Conservation Corps. If you've heard of the Army Corps of Engineers, pretty similar programs. It was all part of that Roosevelt era, packages to get people back to work with programs like that. So there was a catch. They only worked on public land. He did end up donating the entire cave back to the state of Arizona. Now once they were in here, they did do all the alterations to the cave, all the floors and railings and stuff. But you had to be 18 to 24 years old. You signed a 2-year contract. You had to be unmarried and remain that way the entire time, and they paid you $1 a day. They would split that up and send 3/4 of your pay home to your family. And then it was wild because it lasted from 33 to 37. On the day that it ended in 37, suddenly thousands of people were married at the exact same time. They were sneaking out the back. They'd go back into town, grab a priest, bring him up there, and hold weddings up there the entire time they weren't supposed to. And this cave is still an active wedding venue. We had 2 in here last year. One was up in that drapery room. I'm sorry, the altar room. The other one was in the drapery room. But the people up there made an interesting choice. Their entire wedding party wore bat onesies. Turned out to be a good choice. The other people had to change clothes because after being around, walking around the cave for a while before the wedding, all of their clothes started to look like the walls. Which, speaking of the walls, all this weird stuff growing out is called cave popcorn. This cave was underwater until about 12,000 years ago when it started drying out. And that right there is the original water line. In that water, we had the crystal, the 2 acids we talked about earlier, carbonic and sulfuric, and a lot of pressurized gas, mostly carbon dioxide. Now, just like when you open a soda and all that pressure goes away and the gas starts to escape, same thing happened here, just a lot slower. As that water level drops, all that escaping gas pushed out the crystal and the acid, forming cave popcorn. It's also known as cave coral, and that stuff right there is edible. If you take that, grind it up into a powder, squish it into a circle, you get Tums. This calcium carbonate is the base ingredient in Tums. Now, if you did eat that from in this cave, your stomach problem, like if it was upset, it would solve that. But because of the bat dust, you'd have a lot more problems to deal with. This crystal also holds a little bit of a secret. So, I'm not going to say all limestone, because there are anomalies in places, but most limestone in the world holds phosphates. And as this crystal forms, erodes the limestone, it'll leach some of those phosphates out and into the crystal lattice itself. After that, I can take a shortwave UV and blast that rock with that light. The phosphates will excite a little bit, hold on to some of that energy, and when I take the light away, radiate it back out of me.
Wow, that's cool.
And that's called phosphorescence. There have also been 27 movies filmed in this cave. A lot of them were nature documentaries. We've had Disney, BBC, Nat Geo, and PBS out here multiple times. In the 70s, though, there were some low-budget horror films filmed right here. I found one of them. For some reason, it's on Amazon for $2. So I was like, you know what?
What's it called?
It's called Night of the Lepus. Lepus is Latin for rabbit, and the plot of the film is that giant mutant rabbits live in the cave, and at night they escape and attack the town below. They had a really low budget, so when you see the actual props, they're giant fluffy bunnies that they dipped in red paint. They'd have their actors run by and just throw them at them as hard as they could. And then in the 80s, Sesame Street made a movie here. It's called Sesame Goes Western. Now, I have not seen the whole thing. What they did with it is they aired it a couple times and then released it on something called Viewmaster. If you don't know what that is, Google it when we get out of the cave. It's pretty old. I did see a bootleg version of it about the last 20 minutes, and it's actually the entire crew down in this cave. Big Bird's leading them, and they come right through that tunnel that we just walked through. And when they get here, though, they freeze, because Big Bird sees something that he thinks is scary. Right over here on my right, we have our cave T-Rex. You see that eye and eyebrow, snout, nose, mouth, and those little cheekbones right there. Now, even though they're distant relatives, he thinks that's real, and he thinks that's scary. After freezing, he takes off running across the room and breaks through that wall right there. And no caves or birds were harmed in the making of that. That is a natural formation called a keyhole formation. If you do manage to find a full version, please send it to us because I would love to screen it in this room. That'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be funny.
So this cave is both on the National Historic Registry. The bats are also protected as one of those keynote species for the saguaros. What that means for us, if anything's left in here for 5 years or more, it is then an artifact and can no longer be removed. Inanimate objects only. They won't let me live here. I tried. That being said, we do find things back here all the time. Sometimes it's just like little pieces of metal, just stuff like that, but we do find really cool stuff. When we find the cool stuff, we put them in display cases in our Hall of Time for you to see. So there were bandit groups that used this cave to hide out in the late 1800s. From them, we discovered a duster with original pit stains, a bedroll cantina, a whiskey bottle,
Nasty.
and if you know a little bit about coffee, a little bit about American history, right down there we have a block of Arbuckle's coffee. That was the coffee that was on every single Wells Fargo stagecoach and train as they were crossing the country. And if you ask them, that's the coffee that won the West. A little bit biased though, they did write that. So that company's still in business too. So if you go to like the Fry's grocery store, you can still find that. I did try it. It's okay. It's like better than Folgers. So it's coffee. But there is a bit of a legend about the bandits that used to hide out here. Now, if you're looking down south, once we're up top, there's a little town down there called Vale. And then you also see a railroad. That's the Southern Pacific Railroad. It used to run a lot closer to the park. And there eventually was a train stop there. Now, the bandit group robbed that train 3 separate times. Turned out it was the same conductor every time, too, so he was pretty mad. But in total, they ended up stealing about $70,000 worth of silver and gold coins, and then running to the cave and hiding. The sheriff from Tucson followed them. He sticks his head in that hole, gets shot out, and decides to wait outside for 4 days, because eventually they have to leave, right? Well, he gives up after that 4 days, and he goes into town, gets himself a drink at the saloon, and guess who he runs into? The bandits. They went out the back, and they had not been in here for the entire 4 days he was waiting. Now, they did have themselves an Old West shootout. One survives. His name was Phil Carver, and he was put away for 18 years. 2 days after he gets out, where do you think that guy went? Right back to the cave. That sheriff had hired a PI to follow him, and the PI also goes into the cave. But nobody ever sees them again. So they were either already working together, they made a deal while they were in here, or them and the money are still down here somewhere. If we're walking along, you see anything circular, silver, and gold, who was the first person you should tell?
Nobody.
I'm gonna have to come back. I'm gonna have to have you come back to the front, man. I gotta keep a better eye on you. So as we're passing by on the left, this is some of the personal effects of Frank himself. And one of the things he left behind for us was his carbide headlamp. If you've never seen one of these, look at that hat as we walk by. In that, there's a little flap at the top. You flip that up, put a piece of carbide in the chamber. It reacts, spitting out a flammable gas that you can then light. Now, there is no pressure regulation valve on that, though, and it is basically a mini flamethrower. If you were to drop it too far down a hole or hit your head on a rock too hard, they were known to explode. And that was a mind-blowing experience. After Frank's stuff, we do have some of the tools the CCC left behind. If we're looking at that front wheel of that wheelbarrow, that's made out of cast iron.
Wow.
And if you look at the handles, that's also made out of cast iron. That thing weighs about 85, 90 pounds with nothing in it. And then they'd stack 200 or 300 pounds of rock on top of that and move it throughout the cave.
Jeez.
There would be about 100 members of the CCC in here at a time for about 6 months. They would then call another park, be like, hey, let's trade, and they'd trade their entire staff there. They did get to see the country. They moved around every 6 months. And usually when they came in here, they were pretty skinny. You know, it was the Great Depression, people weren't eating a lot. But they did feed them 3 square meals a day, and all of them were beans. So by the time they left, they were pretty tough.
I was going to say, they're probably beans. Beans and more beans.
There was actually an advertisement in this area because people in Tucson have always been weird. And it was a newspaper, and on the front it was like, join the CCC, you get free housing, $1 a day pay, and 3 square meals a day of 3 different types of beans. Turn the page, it shows you the types of beans. The beans you had yesterday, the beans you'll have today, and the ones you'll have tomorrow.
That's funny.
The complaints were about the food. For a little while, this was known as Singing Springs Cave. Side railing, please make use of it if you need to. We'll pause here for people in the back, autos in the back there. If you start rolling down the stairs, there's not really enough room to move to the left. Let you keep rolling on your own. It creates a domino effect. I know I'm a sturdy guy, but I'm gonna probably catch like 5 of you. So we'll have to be careful going down there. Make sure to watch our head, shoulders, knees, and
Toast.
use that right-hand side railing, and when we get to the bottom without incident, we'll give AutoZone a round of applause for being our hero today.
What about the guy in front of me? Can I hold on to him?
No.
The no touching rule applies to the other patrons as well. When we get to the bottom, it may start to feel a little bit chillier to you. The temperature didn't change. It is still 70 degrees, but as we get lower into the earth, there's less humidity down here, and it makes it feel a little bit chillier.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been from the sweat and the cold air hitting on me. Cooler air.
Cool it up a little bit. So after we get to the bottom of the staircase, in the next room as we're passing through, make sure you look left and then right, because we'll be walking through an ancient underground riverbed. Before the cave started drying out, at the other end, and I'll show you when we get there, there used to be a small spring that came out of the rocks. It combined with water from above into that underground river. We walk through here, just look left, and then look right. Underground riverbed. Now for the other 39 miles, this guy keeps
wow.
popping up throughout that survey.
That's cool.
And then from the drapery room, if you follow the arrows, you pop out right here. Not only are you 30 foot deeper than you were before, you're about a quarter mile further back. And that was one of the CCC guys that carved those arrows, so he's probably behind his grave laughing at me, because I walked around for like half an hour just in circles. freestanding. As we make our way into this room, a couple things to look out for. On our left, there's a big old hole in the ceiling. Just look at that and then keep it in mind because it will come back around later. Take our line. Take our line to about right here. And then we'll stop for just a minute.
Yeah, we can tell all the employees walking down there.
We only have 1 or 2 people down here at a time though, because if you get everybody walking through, it kicks up all this dust and it takes about a day to settle. So you can't see it here anymore.
Just try it.
I don't want to try that. Shit. Well, if we could just a little bit further down. Make sure. So with that deal, Frank giving the cave back to the state, there were 3 stipulations in that. Now the first one was that he and his family could live on property as long as they wanted. The second was that the CCC would build him a house. And the third, as long as he was physically able, Frank would be the only tour guide for this cave. June of 1955 was his last month giving tours down here. Started handing off responsibilities. Because he was 84 years old. And yeah, from what I've heard from the people that knew him, he kept caving by himself after that. Because he just loved it too much and wouldn't stop. But imagine it's the 40s and you're Frank. The CCC left at 37, so now you're just living in this house. Top, you have this cave that you're taking care of. This space needed. Now that house is made of rock, and it does sit at the top of a mountain in the middle of an arid desert. Back then, didn't have air conditioning in it. We can't put air conditioning in it now because it's a historical building. So many times it gets above like 90 degrees up there, and it's way too hot to live in there. He and his family though, they grab all their camping equipment all down and they set up right where I'm standing. Camping down here for a while. It's cool enough to go back and talk about. And that is why we call this Frank's living room. Now the only natural cave floor we'll be walking on today is this stuff right here. It's called cave ice. It is slippery. It's how it forms. It'll be a hole in the rock or a slight bit of crystals right now. That fills up with water and forms a crystal lattice on the top. The water underneath, it'll either drain away or evaporate, and every time it fills back up, it gets that crystal lattice on the top, it gets a little thicker. There is no upper limit to how thick, but in general, it's just a couple of inches down to a couple of centimeters. Where I'm standing now used to be a dome of cave ice, going from this lip right there, all the way to that little lip over there. But after all that walking on it, it did break through. Luckily, there was limestone underneath. With cave ice, that's one of the most dangerous things in caves, because you never know what's underneath it until you break it. Usually, there's a couple of situations. Either you break through and about 4 inches down, you find more limestone, or you'll break through and like 40 foot down, there's your limestone. And you never know until it breaks. If you're walking alone in a natural cavern, by yourself, which first off, you should always have 2 other people in 3 forms of light each with you, and the floor starts to sound like this. You're probably on cave ice. Best practice, stick to the wall and then go back the way you came until it no longer sounds hollow. It is still a crystal structure though. So I need myself a volunteer. Alright, there you go, Sam. You're up. Pop on down. Now I'm gonna give you this light right here. Take that. I'm gonna set it right here on the rock. Now we're not gonna push down any, but we do need to touch the rock the entire time. And just right in that way. Yeah. It's that same phosphorescence, but this stuff down here, it does do it a little bit better than that cave ice. There's a lot less back dust in this area. It makes this big part of the cave as much. Oh yeah, and all that blue fuzz down there, that's people dust. It's lint from our clothing. We do have a guy that it's supposed to be every 6 months. It's been 8 now, so maybe we don't have him anymore. But he would come by, he'd vacuum up all that and the dust, and then he'd separate the lint from the dust. Put the dust back in the cave. It's still an artifact. Alright, draw some happy face right quick. And then I'll take the flashlight back on.
That's crazy.
What was your name? One more time. Sam? Alright. Yes, for Sam. And then we'll do an A for anarchy. So before we move on, we do gotta give all those on right there a round of applause. Thank you for coming upstairs with us.
Hey, thank you.
At the bottom of these 4 steps, though, we'll hit this flat part. And this is the bottom of the cave. You are 71 feet below the ground. So if you took the Caver's Creed as soon as you hit this, congratulations, you're a caver. A victory dance is in order, if you feel so inclined. And we'll move along.
Well, that's a great dance. I'm gonna do it now.
That's
71 feet.
71 feet.
That's not even fulfilled now.
It's way more shallow than most caves.
Yeah.
You go into a mine, you'll go down several miles sometimes too.
Yeah.
As we're passing, like official mine, there's a new pit mine over there. It's
Ohio open pit. Tahoe is open pit.
Yeah, they're doing a certain kind of like copper mining that I don't exactly agree with. The yield is too low for the cost, but environmentally.
All their pits been shut down, I believe.
So in this room, as we're passing through, there are lots of things to look at. Big old curtains up top and an awesome reverb in here. Do not forget that this guy is sticking out on your right as you walk by, because he has broken 4 noses so far. 2 of them were tour guides. He's literally right there as you look around, and then if you turn, don't see him, bam, right in the face. Now he's beautiful though. On the inside, on the outside, he's kind of ugly out for blood. If we shine that UV light all the way up there, we can see just how far that crystal goes back.
Wow.
And because he's so clean, he does still hold that phosphorescence.
That's crazy.
So OSHA had to put a tag on that thing caution you.
All this was built before OSHA existed, so. And then they didn't, you know.
Grandfathered it in, huh?
Yeah, that's grandfather. Since it's in this one.
What a tight fit right in here.
Going up these stairs right here on the right hand side, about halfway up over that railing, there are some boulders sticking out, so make sure you watch your right shoulder. At the top, there's a big hole in the rock. As we pass by, make sure you look up in there, see back there, and then once we're at the top of the stairs, we'll talk about what that is.
Before you get that sign in.
See the wood up there.
And for my taller people, as we're coming up this section of stairs right here, make sure to stick to your right. We got some stuff hanging down right here. And they are learning bad habits of thing.
Wow, this is pretty.
Forward progress.
Forward only.
Wow, it goes deep back there.
Well, how many people in the back are trying to reach over there trying to grab some bricks and piece of that off? Hold me, Mark. I'll see if I can't get it.
Be pretty hard. So
Kind of hard to break it off. Huh?
anything that is bigger than 2 inches, like in diameter, is
Yeah.
really hard to break. Anything below that, don't put any pressure on it at all ever, because it might break. And if you're climbing around, that's bad for you and your health. So if you were to rise straight up through the rocks above our heads and hit the surface, you'd find yourself in the parking lot. As you came in today, you may have noticed this already, but as you leave, you definitely will. On your left-hand side of that parking lot as you're exiting, it looks like there's the top of a sunken shed up there. That's the top of that construction shaft back there. And that is the CCC construction shaft. Now, they weren't allowed to use power tools. They only used hand tools to do all this work in 3.5 years. All of the rocks that we walked on did not come from inside the cave. They came from a quarry about a mile away. And before they widened the entrance back there, everything came down on those ladders. Now, there is a small winch at the top that couldn't handle very much weight. So all their tools and anything else that wasn't on that winch, they were just climbing up and down the ladders, guys, jumping in and out. Pretty wild. I don't know if that could even be organized like that today, you know?
$1 a day, you said?
$1 a day. Which, I mean, that was 1933, so it was worth a lot more than that. If we're looking up in this crevice right here, that's where that spring used to come out of the rocks, delivering all of this crystal into our silent waterfall. Now, this is one of my favorite formations. It's not very damaged. There's a couple pieces broken off over there, but it also does something pretty cool. About 13 weeks ago, up on the top right side over here, a new moisture mark appeared. If you stand here and you watch that tiny little stalactite up there all day long, it'll drip at least once when it's not raining. When it starts raining, that does cuts down to about like 10-15 minutes in between those droplets. So even though we are a dormant cavern, that doesn't mean we're always 100% completely dry. Now, that doesn't mean we can change our classification or anything, but we do know that's not coming from us, and there are 2 other places that's actually back there. And those tunnels back there that are still dripping and have been for the past 13 weeks. It's pretty cool stuff happening down there. I hear bats squeaking. Where'd you go, friend? Just want to say hi. If you enjoy bowling, as we pass by this little solution tunnel on our left, we got our 1-ball, 1-pin bowling alley.
That's funny.
That's where I look, huh?
With actual bowling, you'd think that would make the game easier. You only have
Yeah.
one thing to aim at, right? Makes it harder. You only have one thing to aim at.
Yeah, you don't have the other ones knocked down.
I can play a perfect game if I get strikes every time. If I have to go in for a second one, it's just downhill from there. Get in the zone! Woo! So we do have to be careful on this staircase. Whatever teenager built it that day, we must have left them unattended for a while because these are not the right size. They're a little bit smaller than the rest of the cave steps. So what we will do is 1 foot directly out in front of you, like normal. 1 foot turned directly to your right. You got that V shape of stability. Use the right hand side railing and keeping that form, just sidestep on down.
It's just like going to Anne Frank's house.
Right here, if you're taller, make sure to duck underneath this guy. At the end.
You know, Anne Frank's house, you hit your knees on the next step.
Oh, wow, that's a drop.
So after the stairs on our left, we have our sinkhole. Junior. If you look down at the bottom, there's a bunch of cave ice down there and then some rocks that used to be up here before they fell. After the junior sinkhole, we do have those 2 giant stalagmites and a hole right in the middle of them. Keep that in mind, we'll talk about it in a second. If you're not afraid of heights, as we come in this room, go ahead and head down, park yourself on that platform right there, and then just look straight down in the hole.
Teenagers do a good job.
They were supervised by park engineers. Newer management.
Okay, that's going to do it from Colossal Cave. Great experience. A lot of bees when we first walked in the door, and then the bats were having a good time with the bees. So, but besides that, the rest of the tour was great. Bats don't bother me, to be honest. Actually, I use bat guano a lot in my garden. Not only deters pests, other insects and stuff, but it's a great fertilizer. But not to bore you with gardening science, yeah, this will do it from Colossal Cave. Thanks for being here. If you guys can hit this thumbs up and sub button, greatly appreciate you guys. Lots of love. Peace.